I'm 73 years old. I've been awake since before dawn, sitting at the kitchen table where only one chair gets used now. And there's something I finally understand that took me 52 years to see clearly. It's strange to admit that out loud. 52 years is most of a life, longer than many people get at all. And yet, I walked through those years believing I was doing things right. I'm not telling this because I want sympathy. I'm not even telling it to make peace with myself. I'm telling it because time has narrowed my reasons down to one simple thing. There isn't much of it left, and this truth feels wrong to take with me and bury. When you reach my age, the days feel quieter, not peaceful, just quieter. The phone doesn't ring much. The mail is mostly advertisements and appointment reminders. The world keeps moving, but it does so without asking where you are. That's when you start thinking back, not to the big moments everyone talks about, but to the ordinary ones, the evenings, the car rides, the conversations you postponed because you were tired or busy or thought tomorrow would be better. I used to think the important parts of life announced themselves, that they arrived with noise, with certainty, with a feeling that said, "This matters." They don't. Most of what mattered passed me while I was looking at something else. In my 20s, I was sure I understood how life worked. I wasn't arrogant about it. I was practical. I believed effort equaled progress, and progress would eventually turn into happiness. I got a job that paid steadily. Nothing impressive, but solid. I showed up early. I stayed late. I learned how to be reliable. People trusted me. That felt good. I told myself I was building something. I got married young. We were both tired a lot. We talked about the future the way people do when they assume it's guaranteed. Kids, later. Travel, someday. Rest when things settled down. Things never really settle down. They just change their shape. When our first child was born, I was scared in a quiet way. Not panic, responsibility. I remember holding that tiny body and thinking, I have to get this right. So I worked more. That seemed reasonable. Everyone around me did the same. Providing was love. Stability was care. That's what I believed. There were evenings I came home late and found the house already quiet. Toys picked up, dishes done, my wife asleep. I'd sit on the edge of the bed and think, I'll make it up to them this weekend. Weekends filled themselves. Errands, fixing things, catching up. I didn't feel like I was neglecting anyone. I felt necessary, needed, useful. Those words can be dangerous. They disguise absence as virtue. In my 30s and 40s, life sped up. Days blended together. I knew my coworkers' habits better than my own children's moods. I knew which meetings mattered and which didn't. But I couldn't tell you what my son was worried about at school or why my daughter suddenly went quiet at dinner. I noticed it, vaguely. I told myself it was a phase. Kids grow. They pull away. That's normal. Normal is another dangerous word. It makes you stop asking questions. There were moments I could have chosen differently. Small ones. A conversation I could have stayed in instead of checking my watch. A school event I skipped because I was tired. A walk I declined because there were emails waiting. Each choice made sense on its own. That's how it happens. No single moment feels like a betrayal. It's only years later that you realize what you were trading. I didn't understand then that presence isn't something you schedule for later. It's something you either give when you're there or you don't. Time doesn't store it for you. My marriage wore down quietly. There were no dramatic fights, just fewer shared stories, less laughter. We became efficient together, coordinated, polite. We talked about practical things, bills, appointments, who would pick up groceries. We stopped talking about how we felt because there never seemed to be room for it. And after a while, it felt awkward to start again. I told myself this was adulthood. That passion faded. That companionship was enough. Maybe it is if you tend to it. I didn't. I was always looking slightly ahead, convinced the meaningful part was just over the horizon, after the next promotion, after the kids were older, after retirement. I lived as if life was a rehearsal. The turning point didn't arrive with drama. It arrived with a phone call on an ordinary afternoon. My wife was sick. Not immediately, not obviously, just tired more often, short of breath. Appointments multiplied. I kept working. Someone had to keep things running. The day she was admitted to the hospital, I remember standing by the bed, listening to machines, realizing I didn't know how to talk to her anymore. Not really. I knew facts, schedules, but not the softer things. We had lost practice. She looked at me and said very calmly, "I wish we'd had more time together." That sentence didn't accuse me. It didn't blame. That made it worse. She died 6 months later. After the funeral, the house felt enormous and empty at the same time. Silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the presence of everything unsaid. I went back to work after a few weeks. People were kind. They told me to take it easy, to focus on myself. I didn't know how. Work had been my language for decades. Without it, I had nothing fluent to say. My children were grown by then. Kind, busy. They visited when they could. We talked about weather, about traffic, about their lives in broad strokes. I realized something painful during those visits. They didn't need me the way I once imagined they would, and they didn't really know me either, not deeply. That wasn't their fault. I had taught them what to expect. Retirement came later than I thought it would. When it finally did, there was no relief, just a strange emptiness. I had spent so long preparing for a future that no longer needed preparation. Days stretched. I filled them with routines, walks, television, sorting through old papers. That's when clarity arrived. Not all at once, slowly, like a light coming on in a room you've been sitting in for years. It took me 52 years to understand that I had been postponing my life in the name of being responsible. I wasn't chasing money or status. I was chasing the feeling that I was doing the right thing, that I was earning my place, that someday I would arrive at a point where I could finally relax into being present. That point never came. Presence doesn't wait for permission. What can't be fixed now is simple and devastating. I can't go back and sit on the floor with my children when they wanted me. I can't have the long conversations with my wife that we assumed we'd get around to. I can't rewrite the habits that taught people I was busy, distant, reliable, but not always available. Time doesn't refund itself. People remember how you made them feel, not how hard you worked. I used to think that was something people said to sound wise. It's not. It's an accounting that happens whether you believe in it or not. I'm not consumed by regret every moment. Some days are gentle. Some memories are warm. I did love my family. I did try, in my way. But love that isn't expressed consistently becomes harder to feel. For them, for you. If you're listening to this and you're younger than I am, I won't tell you what to do. I don't know your life. I don't know your pressures. I'll just tell you what I wish I had understood earlier. There is no later version of you who will magically have more time, more patience, more emotional energy. The habits you're building now are the ones you'll live with. The conversations you keep postponing don't wait quietly. They fade. The people you assume will always be there grow tired of waiting to be seen. You don't have to quit your job or abandon responsibility. That was never the point. The point is noticing where your attention goes when you have a choice, not the big choices, the small ones. Whether you look up when someone starts talking, whether you sit down instead of standing halfway out the door, whether you listen without planning your response, those moments feel insignificant. They aren't. They're the substance. At 73, I live with the quiet knowledge that my remaining time is measured differently now. I try to be present with it. Some days I succeed. Some days I fall back into old patterns. Habits are patient. They wait. If this meant something to you, if it stirred something uncomfortable or familiar, you don't need to do anything grand about it. Just notice it. Sit with it longer than is convenient. That's something I rarely did. I don't know how much time I have left. None of us do. But I know this. Understanding something late doesn't erase its truth. It just makes it heavier to carry. I'm learning to set that weight down where I can. Slowly, carefully, and when the house is quiet in the morning and the light comes in through the window, I remind myself that even now, attention is a choice. It always was.